Welcome and thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. It's a pleasure to bring our guest coming on the program today back. Originally, we interviewed him on a wonderful book that a lot of people are really talking about, simply titled The Biology of Belief. Especially when we're in a day and age where people are beginning to understand neuroscience and the way that we can actually co-create our own reality, we must scratch our heads sometimes and ask ourselves, and how come I'm creating a reality that just isn't working too well for me? Well, in the book, The Biology of Belief, it talks just about that. The biology of belief even goes down to a cellular memory and level, and that if there is a way that we can go directly to that, then perhaps we can change things around, therefore changing the reality that we have. The newest book that is out by our guest today is titled Spontaneous Evolution, and I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our special guest, Dr. Bruce Lipton. Bruce Lipton, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Daniel, thank you so very much for this opportunity to spread some wonderful and exciting news. And I get so excited about it because it's so empowering that I just want everyone to hear about this wonderful new science, because the new book, Spontaneous Evolution, is talking about the fact that we are in process of a major upheaval in human evolution right now, and civilization is on a turning point. Everyone can feel it. That it's coming to a crunch, and if you understand what's happening, it's very exciting. If you don't understand what's happening, of course, it's very scary at some point. But but the fact is, we're going through a path that we've sort of essentially been through before, and if you can see where it's going, and it gets very exciting because it's an opportunity for us to create a much more wholesome and wonderful life experience on this planet.
You know, there's no doubt that what you're saying is true. I remember when I was hosting radio back in 1999, and that, of course, was right on the cusp. Toward the end of the years, we were approaching Y2K. And everybody was kind of in upheaval, thinking, oh, my goodness, the end is near. Be sure you stockpile everything that you need. But also, during that time, I was noticing that I was receiving a lot of, I guess, call them religious books from different spiritualities, from people around the world. And my personal experience with what was happening was, I'm starting to see this message like we're all starting to get it, that the summit is the same. It's just that there are many paths to get there, that there's this awakening beginning to happen. And as I would describe that to people that I knew, they said, oh, you're talking about Marxism, or you're talking about this. And I said, no, there's something, you could just see it. You can feel it. And through these people, I could see it was becoming true. And obviously, that's something people are understanding about you and your work.
Well, it's part of this whole evolution because it's not the evolution of the human being. It's not that we are humans that are going to be changing physically in this evolution. It has nothing to do with that. It's the evolution of humanity, meaning that what we perceive of evolution as going from fish to frogs to lizards and up to mammals and stuff like that. We see that form of evolution. There's a more fundamental evolutionary pattern that's underneath, and it's a pattern of when an individual type of organism is formed, that's the evolution of the organism. But the next level of evolution is the organization or community of those organisms. And basically, all organisms are in community. From the most primitive bacteria on this planet, they're in community. They're in contact with each other. The information is exchanged with all of them. All the way up through humans, the nature is an organism is evolved, and then an organism forms a community, which becomes a unit. So to give a parallel understanding, we look in the mirror, Daniel, we see ourselves as single individuals, and then I said, but that's a misperception because you're actually made out of 50 trillion cells. The cells are the living entity. You, as a human, by definition, you're a community of 50 trillion cells. And yet, so you look at the community, but it becomes a one thing. It becomes a human. Well, the evolution that's in front of us is a parallel to that exactly, and that is when the human evolved, that was like the cell evolving. And then what the human did was to start making small colonial organizations, and then larger organizations, and bigger, massive organizations in community. And the significance about that is because the drive is to start with a single entity and then create a community which itself becomes a single entity. So I'd say, where are we now? Well, we're at the stage that we're beginning to realize that if we're going to stay alive on this planet, the first thing is we have to all cooperate at some point.
Right.
And that means we all have to form a giant global community. And this is the evolution. Humanity is what's evolving from us as the cells in the body of humanity. So as much as you can't, to a cell can't see the human being that it's a part of. It's so small compared to the whole size. And I'd say when we look at humanity, it's so big it covers the entire globe, but we only see each other locally right here. And it's like, no, the whole thing is all one human coating on the earth, and it's forming a superorganism. And the idea is either we learn right now that we cooperate and start living in harmony with each other and with the planet, or, as science has already given us notice, we're going extinct. We're in a process called the sixth mass extinction of life on this planet. 5 times in the history of the planet, life essentially got wiped out and then started all over again from scratch. And what's interesting about this is that the first 5 mass extinctions were due to things like comets or asteroids hitting the Earth and upsetting the environment, etc. And today's mass extinction, we're accelerating very quickly into right now, is actually due to human behavior. So all of a sudden it says, oh my God, we are, without knowing it, undermining our own existence by traumatizing the garden, that I would call it, the traumatizing Gaia, the planet, which had a very wonderfully balanced ecosystem, and we were introduced to as maintenance of that balance. In fact, at our level of evolution, we're so powerful because humans could tilt one way or the other way and shift the whole balance. And this is what the problem is. We, without being aware of it, we've shifted the balance of nature by upsetting the ecosystem, like cutting down the rainforest and polluting the ground with all the chemistry and all this kind of stuff like that, and the air, et cetera. So it says, look, humans are causing this situation. And it's like, well, what does that mean? I mean, it's like, well, here's an interesting fact. Within 30 years, there won't be fish left in the ocean, that we, the kind that we eat. And it's like, imagine the whole Earth globe with no fish in the ocean. Well, that's because we've undermined that ecosystem. That's part of the extinction process. So Albert Einstein had a wonderful phrase. He said, you cannot solve the problems with the same thinking that created the problems. And this is what the issue is. The thinking that we've been involved with on this planet, which are fundamental beliefs acquired from science, has led to our own self-destruction. And yet what's interesting is science has revised the 4 major beliefs on which we built our culture, and it changes us completely around if the people become aware of this. And this is what we have to do, is get this new understanding out to the people, because belief creates our personal reality, and that's what the Biology of Belief book was all about. And then it goes, but what if millions of people share the exact same belief? And all of a sudden you say, oh my God, that makes that belief system become very concrete and real. That's what happens. So while we personally make our own lives with our own belief, in a culture or civilization, massive numbers of people believing in the same things create that reality, just as much as we personally create our own reality. So you look at the world and we say, oh my God, look at all the violence and competition. I go, oh, now that's a scientific principle called Darwinian theory, which is the belief system that evolution is based on a struggle for survival. So that's a fundamental scientific belief, but it comes built into our culture because it's the way of understanding the world. And that's why we live in a world of high competition, which ultimately, of course, must lead to violence and war at that level. And it's based on the belief that there won't be enough for us. And that's a principle of Darwinian science, except we now know that whole belief is wrong, that evolution isn't based on that kind of competition. Evolution is based on cooperation. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden it's like,
look at any ecosystem and you'd know that's completely true. Otherwise it doesn't exist or it doesn't work.
Daniel, that's exactly right, and that's why, look, there was a garden, actually, in a sense that if you were delivered to Earth all this, before humans got here, and you looked around and go, wow, this is beautiful, this is so great, and it was a garden, and then we were introduced to help balance, because every organism that's introduced in evolution isn't there by accident, which is another problem with Darwinian theory, because in addition to the belief that we're here in a violent competition for our survival, which is one facet of that belief, it also said that the mutations that gave rise to organisms result from random events, so it's called random or accidental mutations, and then you say, well, if that's how we got here, then what would be the purpose of us being here? And if you believe the science of that Darwinian theory, it says, well, you got here by accident, then all of a sudden you say, oh, then there was no reason for us to be here. It was just a coincidence of genetics, and therefore we have no relationship for our existence on this planet, except now we know that organisms evolve as complements to the environment. And the relevance to that is that every time the environment starts to shift off a little bit one way or the other, nature introduces another organism to try to bring it back. So it swings back and forth as each organism is brought in, but it gets to a more steady state by the time humans evolved, and we're sort of at the very top, like of a seesaw, being in the middle of the fulcrum at the seesaw with one foot on one side of the seesaw, one on the other. If we tilt one way or we tilt the other way, the whole seesaw moves around without even much effort. And that's exactly human relationship to the environment, that we're on the top of the seesaw, and if we move one way or the other way, we change the balance of nature. Well, the problem is thinking that we were here by accident and there was no purpose for our existence. The concept of keeping harmony in the environment has never been in our thinking process, and as a result of that, and our destruction of the environment, now we are facing that extinction. See, so that science was wrong, that there were reasons for us to be here, and we're supposed to be here in cooperation with ourselves and everything else. That was the evolution. And the two other beliefs that we built our world on that are wrong are the beliefs that genes control our lives. And this is profound for this reason, because as far as we know, we didn't pick the genes we came with. And if we don't like the traits we have, we can't change the genes. And then we start to own the reality. Oh, my God, I'm a victim of my genes, my heredity. If there's Alzheimer's in my family, I'm going to be set up here. Right. If there's cancer, it's like, I'm a victim. And so that victim means powerless. You're powerless. That's what we teach people. And it turns out the new science called epigenetics completely undermines that whole entire belief that genes control life. Genes control nothing. Right. It's our perceptions that control the life. Our perceptions adjust our genes to fit the environment. So why is that important? And the answer is because we live in a world where everybody feels they're a victim and their beliefs are undermining their vitality in their life. And then we learn that this epigenetics says, well, wait, it's your perception and your response to the environment that controls your genes. And all of a sudden it says, oh, my God, well, then I'm not really a victim because I can change my perceptions and I can change my environment. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, my God, here we are been programmed to be victims when, in fact, we are masters of our genetics. So it's like,
well, Dr. Lipton, that's an interesting
Bruce,
point.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, I was actually going to say, just comment on that point real quick, is that we created also a way that this victim mentality is a way that we market products and services to people. You take a look at most of your, pharmaceutical commercials on television. They may come up with some kind of an anomaly we didn't know we had. Then they come up with what they believe to be a solution for whatever that is. So we're automatic. Oh, I might have that. I'm a victim of that kind
Absolutely.
of thing. And I can see exactly what you're talking about. Now, the other thing too, Dr. Lipton, is today we have a special. Pardon me,
Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce.
I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
Bruce,
yeah.
I'd like to say that we have what is considered to be, she considers herself to be one of your greatest fans. She's been a regular guest on our program. She also works as an addictions counselor and was inspired to change how she does her work by reading your books such as Biology of Belief and using a process known as PSYCH-K. And I'd like to introduce to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Mrs. Rita Soman. Rita, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. Rita?
Yeah, hi.
Okay, there she is. Okay, Dr. Bruce Lipton, or Bruce as he likes to be called,
Yes.
Is on the program. Did you have any questions or comments you'd like to ask?
First of all, Dr. Lipton, thank you so much for writing your book.
Rita, call me Bruce, and thank you very much for reading the book.
Thank you, Bruce. I just want to give you an update about where I am in my own life as a result of reading your book. Your book was the only book that led me to, okay, how do you change these beliefs, and led me to PSYCH-K. And after I took all my trainings in PSYCH-K as an addiction counselor, I still didn't think that I had any problem. I thought I was just a counselor trying to help everybody else. Had no clue that I had all those issues that I had supposedly, I believed, worked through with other modalities. I came to this realization 2.5 years into PSYCH-K, trying to work with other people, to realize that how my issues were still there. And I started to do my own work. And today I can say my whole life has been transformed from every perspective. I used to have health problems, thyroid. I don't have that anymore. Health is in perfect condition. Somebody asked me recently, you don't get allergies? And I told them, no, I choose to stay healthy. With perfect health and perfect relationships with everybody. And every aspect of my life is so beautifully evolving. And living a life full of passion and purpose is all a result of your inspiration that I got from your book, and then applied that inspiration with the help of PSYCH-K and turned them into belief statements, and I feel very blessed. So thank you for that.
Rita, thank you for that, because this is exactly why I wrote the book, because I never believed in any of this stuff when I was teaching in the medical school. I was doing conventional research, but the cell research that I was working on the stem cells back then revealed that the environment, and when it comes to humans, our perception of the environment controls our biology. I was like a student, of this. It came into my head, and it was interesting because, like you, I at first I said, well, I have all this wonderful data, and it's like, and I would try to get people to listen to my story, and I'd tell them, if you understand what I'm talking about, you can create the most fantastic life. And it was funny because they would look at me with their heads cocked and go, Lipton, for a guy who says you know this stuff, your life doesn't look that good. and that was when I realized at some point, exactly like you and all of us have to know this, is that just because we become consciously aware of something, in no way does it change the patterns and the programs that are built into the subconscious. And it's the subconscious that runs our life 95% of the time. So when we're not even seeing these behaviors, this is really where it undermines us, and this is the biggest problem we all have to face. And like you said, even when you got aware and you were doing the PSYCH-K and you knew all the information, the other behaviors, they were like back there, but they don't stand out. That's why I guess they're called subconscious, And the significance about it is, well, when we start to recognize that our lives are actually from the subconscious, and neuroscience has now said 95% of our behavior is driven by the subconscious mind, then all of a sudden you start to realize, my goodness, I have two minds, and one of them is not listening to the other one, so that I could become consciously aware of everything about how to create a wonderful life. I could, read all the self-help books and say, my God, I know all the answers here. I could go to a psychoanalysis and find out every person who interfered with my life in some way, shaped it to be so weird, and I would be totally aware of all this stuff. And what I'm doing is feeding my conscious mind with total awareness. And what's interesting is none of that information is really crossing into the subconscious mind. So basically, we find ourselves always up against a wall at some point, with our idea that, well, I'm running my life with my conscious mind and I'm having so much trouble, and then we back off and say, oh, the universe is against me, fate's against me, and it's like, okay, clear the deck, and here's the reason. We only operate 5% of our lives with our conscious mind, which is the mind that has our desires, our wishes, our aspirations for life. And I say, Rita, what do you want out of your life? And you can tell me all these wonderful things. And I say, well, that's great. That comes from the conscious mind, and the conscious mind can actually get you those things, but we only operate 5% of the time from that conscious mind. As a matter of fact, just to let people know, very interestingly, when you lived in your conscious mind and you didn't let your subconscious mind step in for a while, and I'll tell you when that was, at a point in your life you've probably fallen head over heels in love with somebody sometime. And there was this period called the honeymoon, which I call it, and it was the honeymoon part where that love was so beautiful and blissful that it may last only a week, maybe, or months, or a year. I don't know. For some people, it's variable. I say this honeymoon thing. I say, but for that time period, I go back and I say, were you healthy? And the answer is yes. You were absolutely fabulously healthy when you were so in love like that. And I go, did you have energy? And it was like, oh my God, I had so much energy. We made love for days without even stopping for food, and that's how much energy was just coming out of you all over the place. And I said, was life beautiful? And you'd say, it was so beautiful. I couldn't wait for the next day. It was so great. And I go back and say, we call that the honeymoon. But I want people to know that was not an accident. That was a creation. You created those life experiences. And the fact is, if you understood that you created them, then you should also understand that you could create them any time if you understood how did it happen? How was I creating such a beautiful period, whether it was a week or months or a year or whatever time you lived on that honeymoon? And I would then say, well, here's how you create it. And the answer was, when you're in love like that, science has revealed that you stay in the conscious moment with your conscious mind. You keep your consciousness present, as Buddhists would say, mindfulness. You were here now, keeping your conscious mind focused, because the conscious mind is the one that wanders. The conscious mind can think into the future, go into the past, or just disconnect and solve problems in your head. And the issue about that is that's why we only operate 5% of the time with our conscious mind, because it's always moving around. And when it's moving around, not paying attention, the brain default goes into the subconscious programs, whatever that is. So when you're not paying attention with your conscious mind, everything is being run by the subconscious habits. And so why this becomes relevant, so why did the honeymoon happen? The answer was, as science revealed, when you're in love, you stay in the conscious mind, because why? It's so good. Why do you want to let your mind leave? It's so wonderful to be in that state that you keep your conscious mind present. And as long as your conscious mind is present, then you're operating from your wishes and desires. And as long as you're doing that, guess what? You create heaven. That's what it was all about. But then the honeymoon ends, and the reason why is because inevitably life gets busy again. And your conscious mind all of a sudden has to really think about, the job and paying the rent and fixing the car and whatever appointments you have to have. And your mind once your mind starts wandering, the conscious mind, then you default into the subconscious. But the subconscious, as my book reveals, is primarily programmed by other people, your parents and your family and your community when you were growing up. So basically it says when you're in your conscious mind, you're creating with your wishes and desires. And when you flip into the subconscious mind, you're following programs. Basically, the fundamental ones came from other people, from living in that world where you downloaded beliefs from other people. So basically, why the honeymoon ends is that you create the honeymoon when you're living the life you desire, which is the one that comes from your conscious mind, and then you lose the honeymoon when the subconscious mind steps in, because the conscious mind is now busy thinking about stuff. But the subconscious mind is operating with different habits and beliefs. And the moment that happens, the honeymoon ends for a very simple reason, because the relationship that is a honeymoon is two conscious minds interacting with each other, two minds with their wishes and desires and their positive thinking and all that working together simultaneously creates the honeymoon. But when one or two of the people, the minds begin to wander, we introduce the subconscious minds. Well, that's like two entities that are different. And now all of a sudden that relationship that started with two entities now has four entities, two of them uninvited guests, called the subconscious programming, which represent other people's beliefs. So the whole idea is, what can you do about it? Well, one thing you can do is learn how to live in the conscious moment, be mindful. It's an exercise. It's very difficult to do because our world is so busy and causes our conscious mind to move and drift off, which then automatically brings the subconscious in. That's one way, just trying to be mindful. But as you know, Rita, other ways of doing it are, what if you went back and changed the programs in the subconscious mind and installed beliefs that match your conscious wishes and desires? And the relevance is simple. Because if your subconscious is programmed with the same wishes and desires that your conscious mind has, then without you even thinking about it, you would automatically be driven by your subconscious mind to live in the honeymoon anyway. So it's like that is doable and realistic, and I am very happy to say again, I learned from the very beginning that I can talk about all this stuff, but I really had to engage it, and that's where the PSYCH-K came in for me, because by rewriting the subconscious programs that were messing up my relationship, and putting in the ones that I would, that I would do when I was being conscious, I have been on a honeymoon now for over 14 years, and it's so exciting because it's just like, oh my God, it's the same love from 14 years ago now, and it's just creating a different world view, because if your subconscious is running us, that's what the facts are, then it basically says, well, then your life is a printout of your subconscious. And I go, yes, that's exactly what it is. And so why this becomes very interesting and beneficial is, well, if your life's a printout of your subconscious, then you don't have to go backwards in your history to try to unravel the details of your subconscious. It's irrelevant, because your life is an actual equivalent of a computer printout of your subconscious beliefs. And what that really means is simply the things that you get and work for you, the things that make you happy, and they come to you easily. They come to you easily because your subconscious is supporting that. And the things that your life struggles with, the things that you repeat patterns over and over again, what happens in that? That means that you have beliefs in your subconscious that are now habits that are undermining your wishes and desires. And so basically it says, if you want to know what's in your subconscious, look at your life and just say, the things that are wonderful, that's good because they're programmed into the subconscious, and that's why I have them. And then anything that's a struggle, difficult, hardship, irritation promoting or provoking, all those things are then telling you there are subconscious programs that are manifesting those. And if you go into that subconscious and reprogram them, then there's a real understanding that you could live a honeymoon for your rest of your life on this planet, and also see the garden that is here when people stop messing it up.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I am very thankful to you again, and PSYCH-K, that I experience this every day in my life. And I believe that we have to create a heaven here first before we can aspire for being in heaven for forever.
Yes.
So it's so beautiful to create a heaven on earth.
And I think it is the heaven, actually, because this is where we come to create, and it's like a creative reality. And unfortunately, because of our programming as children, where we get the basic habits from our family and our culture, we're creating. You say, well, if I'm trying to create heaven, how come this doesn't look like heaven for me? And the answer is because the programming that you're creating from are beliefs that you downloaded from other people. So we're creating unconsciously their beliefs, and that's why we always are in this conflict where our conscious mind sits back and goes, this isn't the way I would make it, and then try to understand the way it is. And the hard part, Rita, and I lecture to people, when I lecture, they all laugh because they understand about it, and it goes like this. I say, go back, you probably have a friend that you're so very close with, you know your friend's behavior, and you happen to know your friend's parent. And at some point you recognize that your friend shares some of the same behaviors that their parent has. And so you casually mention, you say something like, hey, Bill, you're just like your dad. And that's when I say you back away from Bill, because Bill's going to go ballistic. That how can you compare me to my dad? That's exactly what he'll say. How can you compare me to my dad? And everyone laughs because they're very familiar with this. And I say, well, there are two profound points to that one little simple story. And profound point one is this, is that everyone can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who doesn't see it is Bill. And the point about it is Bill downloaded those beliefs and programs from his father. When he plays them, they're subconscious, meaning his conscious mind's not paying attention, and that's why he's playing them. And so when he's playing these behaviors, Bill's not aware that he's even doing it. And so everyone laughs because they're familiar with that kind of thing in their lives. And then I go, and there's a second profound point to that story, and that point is every one of us is Bill. Mm-hmm. Every one of us plays subconscious programs that we don't see. Mm-hmm. And basically many of these subconscious programs, as psychologists will tell you very clearly, many of the fundamental subconscious programs we were downloaded with are negative and disempowering and limiting. Mm-hmm. And so basically it says, my God, if you're operating 95% of the time from the subconscious and you have fundamental limiting programs in there, then you will unconsciously sabotage your entire life and then not know you're even doing it because you don't see the behavior. So the wake-up call. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm so glad you read the book, Rita, and so glad you did the PSYCH-K process.
And they call it a denial, by the way. If you can't see what they can see, and they say you are in denial.
Well,
so, Dr. Bruce Lipton, there's some questions that, I would like to get your feedback on. I've been working for 24 years as an addiction counselor, and one of my wishes was to feel fulfilled as a counselor, to see the results so I feel fulfilled. And that never happened as a talk therapist. I try to incorporate treatment with other professionals so that people can get benefits from other modalities, including psychotherapy. They got better, 30%, even better progress, but it didn't last for a long time. Mm-hmm. And that's what the frustration led me to keep looking, and finally I found your book and found PSYCH-K, and I've been able to use PSYCH-K with the population very effectively. It's my joy to watch my clients blossom in every area of their life, not just focus on staying clean and sober. And so I used to get, my real test began when I had to do it on my own. Before that, I had a program from 3 different locations, a court-mandated program where I was one of the 2 programs. So I always had a lot of clients. They had to be there. But once I stopped doing that work because I wasn't believing in, like people, when they come, they're forced, and I'm just doing talk therapy and they don't benefit, even though they were quite motivated, some of them. So I kind of wasn't happy with the results. And so I limited my practice to only one place and became an instructor and did my own work. And now I see most of the people who come to me, they are not mandated. They come on their own, and I help them with the root cause and see what is the message in the addiction, and working with them and seeing great progress in them. But what I want to ask you is that, how we are programmed that people with addictions, they're powerless. So what do you say about that?
Well, they're powerless because what happens is we're playing habits. And the habits started a long time ago. And in fact, what we now recognize is that 50% of our personality is already programmed before we're born. And that's a result of interacting with the mother's emotional chemistry in her body, because the fetus feeds off of the mother's blood. And whatever information is traveling in the mother's body, so whatever way she sees the world, whether it's safe or scary, or whether she's angry or insecure, whatever these things are, which is affecting the chemistry of her blood, that's where she gets the emotion feeling from. The fetus feels these same things and is programmed with patterns, so that a lot of patterns occur even before we're born. Then the first 6 years of our lives, our brain is actually doesn't stay in consciousness until after 6, really. That's when we're predominantly in alpha consciousness, because before 6, our predominant brain state is theta, which is hypnosis. And this is a period of download. So unconscious downloading of data by just observing the world, that's exactly how children get a database of programs and habits. They're like video recorders. They record everything, and from the interpretation of that, they create habits. Well, the habits occur unconsciously, and that's why it's called subconscious. And when we start to get the emotional chemistry that pushes us into the habit, that's like the stimulus, which then provokes the response. When we find ourselves in situations where the emotional chemistry is released from the brain, specific values of those chemistries can cause different programs to be engaged unconsciously. That's why it's called the subconscious. It's an automatic process. You could stop it if you stayed present with your conscious mind, but that's very difficult to do, as I said. And the issue about it is, if you don't see that this is going on, and this is why we have problems in the world. I'm saying most people go out there, they say, I'm smarter than my life looks. I have this great awareness, but how come my life doesn't match my great awareness? And that's because if the subconscious programs are invisible, which they are, it's like the story of Bill telling him it's like his dad. If they're invisible, what does it mean for most people, the average person on the street? First of all, they say, I go out every day with my wish to become healthy or be in a great relationship or have a great job. Those are my wish. I move forward like that every day with that in my head. And then whatever happens, I don't seem to get there. And so what's the first thing we say is, it's not me that's responsible. I'm the one. I really wanted to be successful, so it's not me. It must be just fate, or forces are conspiring against me, and that's what it would look like, because you do walk forward every day with this great wish and intention, and then when it doesn't work out, and we don't see a reason as to why it didn't work out, like we didn't do anything wrong, but that's where the problem is. If it's subconscious, you didn't see what you were doing anyway. And that's where the subconscious programs undermine us. So where addictions come into is you get into that emotional state. The chemistry then engages the behavior, and the behavior says, I need a way to momentarily stop the pain of whatever this is. And the system, the subconscious mind, says, I know how to do that. In our history, this is what we do. And so unconsciously, whatever that pattern is, every time you get to that emotional level, you will push the button like on a jukebox, pick the program, and then you'll play the program, and then you'll find yourself repeating it over and over again. And then here comes the problem. Then a lot of people say, look what you're doing. You can see that you're doing this bad, so that you look at it and say, oh my God, I'm not really behaving correctly. And then most people think, okay, I'm going to give myself a good talking to. I'm going to, keep talking to myself and give myself some positive talking. And then I go, well, this is nice, except there's no entity living in the subconscious mind. It's the equivalent of a tape recorder. It's a machine. There's an entity in the conscious mind. That's you. That's the one that says, I'm going to give myself a good talking to. So I say, the conscious mind now wants to talk to the subconscious mind. It's like, there's no communication that way. That's why we have so much awareness in our conscious mind about how life could be really great, and that awareness does not translate into the subconscious program, because the subconscious does not learn in the same mechanism that is used by the conscious mind. So that's why the conscious mind is creative and has great opportunities to manifest ideas and all that kind of stuff. The subconscious mind is really more like that tape player. You push the button and you play the program. And so the issue about it is the subconscious mind is not really creative. And how does it learn? It learns from habit. It learns from hypnosis. Those are the two primary ways. And so basically it says, well, if you want to reprogram the subconscious mind, you actually have to do a process and just becoming aware of what the issues are. And saying, I have an addictive personality. Well, that's great. And I go, that's nice. Your conscious mind is totally aware of your issues and your problem, and your conscious mind is also like sitting in the back seat while the subconscious mind is driving the vehicle. The conscious mind's in the back seat thinking, I'm controlling this vehicle. It's like, no, you're not. The subconscious is controlling the vehicle. And when it does so, you don't see it. And that's why most of us feel so lost and so powerless in the world, because we're thinking we're being inhibited by forces outside of us, and yet realize that there are tapes that play inside of us, and that these tapes do not change by talking to it, reading the books, going to the lectures, because the subconscious mind doesn't use that modality.
How about affirmations?
Affirmations, yes. Now that becomes, it's a habit. See, the subconscious mind does habits. And if you do habits on a religious basis, over time that will then, become the new habit. So basically it says, yes, anything you do as a habit, you can't put like a sticky on the refrigerator. and say, oh, every time I walk by it says don't eat donuts. It's like that's not going to stop me from eating donuts. That's not a habit. That's just a reminder. Basically, a habit is a process, and you have to repeat something over and over and over again, and then the system learns. And yet there are fast ways that you can do it besides the habit, and that's where this energy psychology, this new, all these different modalities, of which PSYCH-K is one. Energy psychology shows that we can rapidly reprogram these things. It's almost like super learning.
In 3 to 5 minutes, we can put an affirmation
yes.
in the habitual mind and
yes.
and see the results. Then I had affirmations all over.
That's the most exciting.
My husband said, "You don't look like anyone of these."
It's most exciting development in this world, and it's so necessary because we don't have a lot of time for changing. We have to do changes fast because we're running against the clock where we have to become different and learn to take power back into our lives and create our world from our wishes and desires and not from the downloaded beliefs that culture has put into your subconscious mind. So this is why I'm so excited, because like they talk about necessity is the mother of invention. And it's like we have a necessity to learn fast, and all of a sudden energy psychology shows up, and it's like, wow, this is great, because you can make those changes 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And this is so exciting, and this is why I get very excited about this, because because I know people can make changes very fast.
I have a few more questions. One is that they call addiction incurable disease. What I thought from that.
This incurable word is very bad, and I'll tell you why.
Bruce, and I would like to interject as well. That, to me, and I remember that I was talking with Rita at one time, and we got into talking about Alcoholics Anonymous, and that generally when you talk with counselors and you've got an alcohol problem, that you're an alcoholic. Now, what I found to me that didn't work, they said, I believe you're an alcoholic if you drink. If you stop drinking, you're no longer an alcoholic. That's just my perception about the whole thing.
Well,
the problem with that is, what I was going to get at is that once somebody of authority, it could be, a counselor, it could be that you're an Alcoholics Anonymous at a meeting, is that these people feel that for the rest of their lives they've been labeled powerless, and I don't buy that.
I'm glad you don't, Daniel, because that is an unfortunate side effect of not knowing what they're doing. And they have people repeat these statements, I am an alcoholic, and whatever they're creating a habit, and the habit they're creating is a very negative habit. And basically, a very simple point, there are beliefs that can heal us, and we call them placebo. And that's like this belief that this pill is if I take this pill, this is going to make me better. And then you take the pill, you get better, and then you find out that the pill had no more effect. It was a sugar pill, okay? And you say, well, what healed you? And it was, certainly it wasn't the pill. And the same thing holds for Prozac, because it turns out Prozac is the equivalent of a placebo. And that's really funny, because a lot of people swear that, it's the Prozac that cured them, but in fact it actually is, in laboratory tests, a placebo. And the significance about it is, but the positive thinking that I'm doing this step and that this is what's going to heal me is really where the intention digs in, and we create what's called the placebo effect. 1/3 of all healing in this world, drugs, surgery, whatever, is placebo effect, number one. Number two, we talk about the placebo effect because it's the positive thinking manifesting through a sugar pill. And everybody goes, yes, I understand that. And I go, now here's the other problem. There's something called the nocebo effect. And the nocebo effect is the consequence of negative thinking. And here's what people have to understand, because it's not spelled out. And it's this. Positive thinking, negative thinking are equally powerful, but they work in opposite directions. So, yes, there's a placebo effect, and a lot of people get cured by it. And yes, there's a bigger nocebo effect, which is negative thoughts can cause illness, disease, and can even kill you. That's a fact. And so why is this relevant? Because if I program negative programs in, that's what I manifest. And if I program positive ones in, that's what I manifest. When I program in that I'm incurable of anything, then I am making a belief statement that will prevent anything from curing me. And it depends on who you buy it from, and that's one of the programs we got as when we were young in our fundamental subconscious programming, we were programmed with a reality that there are professional people who know what they're saying, and you're not one of those. So therefore, when a professional person says it, that becomes your truth. And that's like the doctor. The doctor, you don't take care of your health. The doctor takes care of your health. That's what we were programmed with as kids. Every time we were sick, you have to go to the doctor. And it's interesting because the joke, here's the joke. Yeah, we were all told we'd go to the doctor. Nobody said what the doctor had to do. You just had to go to the doctor, right? So
right.
Here's the joke part, because a lot of people know this. When you're sick and you finally say, okay, I'm going to go to the doctor, and you start to get up and go to the doctor, but on the way to the doctor, you already start to feel better. In the doctor's office, you sometimes feel really, oh, it's gone. I don't know what happened to it. And basically, why? And the answer was this. You were able to heal yourself from the beginning. That was innately built in. But you put a program in the front that said, before I heal myself, I have to go to the doctor. And the fun part about it, I said, because nobody said you had to do anything but go to the doctor. So basically, you complete you put a block in of healing. You say, I don't heal myself until I do what? Go to the doctor. On the way to the doctor, you're completing that step, and then all of a sudden, the system starts to heal itself, and that's why all of a sudden you feel better, because you completed the first step of a block that you put in. Now, as Daniel, as you brought up, if I have a program that says I'm an incurable X, whatever you want to put it there, I don't care what it is, and you have that mantra, or you get it from professional people, a doctor or a therapist who you have been programmed to listen to because you don't know what they know, so therefore whatever they say is your truth. If you buy their truth, then you manifest that as your reality. That's the way the mind works. It takes a belief and manifests it as reality. So basically, you buy the first thing, incurable. And the moment you bought that, because some professional said that, you have immediately put a block in your subconscious mind, which is operating 95% of the time, that controls your biology, that says, I cannot cure this. And this is where the conflicts come from, because the conscious mind has to, I want to cure this. I don't want this anymore. I wish that this would be gone. I want to heal myself. So the conscious mind has this great desire to heal.
Right.
And the subconscious mind says, no, this is incurable. And then I say, well, which one's going to win? And the answer is, well, the subconscious mind is not only working 95% of the time, it's 1,000,000 times more powerful as a computer than the conscious mind. So when you do the math, the incurable one is going to win, and that's why we struggle with wishes and desires to overcome something, and we struggle with it, and then we say, well, we can't do it, and the answer was, well, that's because your subconscious mind has already been programmed with some professional diagnosis that says you can't do it. And the moment that's the diagnosis, that's operating 95% of the time with 1,000,000 times more powerful computer to sabotage your wishes and your desires. And then life is a struggle. And the fact was, well, why is the struggle? And the answer is programming. Just simple. Change that programming from that incurable and put it in that you are powerful enough. And in fact, we are so powerful that it's mind-boggling what humans can do. We know that walking across fire, hot coals, people do that if their belief system is right. And if your belief system is in question about that, you'll get burned. That happens all the time. And I say about many articles that I show, like in my lecture, about women lifting up a car after an accident when a child is pinned under the car, and that here's a woman lifting up a car that weightlifters would struggle to lift up that car, and here's just an average woman picking up the car. Why? Because her belief system is, my kid's under the car, and I'm going to pick it up. Boom.
Exactly.
And then the one that I like the most is religious fundamentalists down in the South work themselves up into a religious ecstasy state, and they testify. That's what they call it, testify that God protects them. And I say, well, what do they do? And so some of them say, look, God protects me, and I'm going to drink this strychnine. And they actually drink toxic doses of strychnine poison with the belief that God will protect them, and guess what? No negative consequences. And what does that mean? It means that they could drink. You can drink strychnine and not be toxic. And the fact you can lift a car, you can walk across fire. And I'm going, yeah, everyone can do this, except that everyone else, most of our belief systems are not engaged to recognize your personal power. And I think, unfortunately, that's an undermining program that's been in our culture for a long time to disempower people. And
other thing they say is the genetics. It's a genetic. You're genetically predisposed to this addiction problem.
That's such a crock.
Well, that's an interesting point, Rita, and I like that you brought that up, is because you hear that even when you go into counseling for addictions. You hear, if your parents or your father was an alcoholic, then you'll most likely become an alcoholic. Just by that statement from the people who were supposedly in the know, okay, I guess I'm just destined to be an alcoholic. There's not a damn thing I can do about it. But again, I don't buy that.
Daniel, let me tell you this, because here's a good one to match that story, and it goes like this. There have been studies of children who are adopted into families in which there's a lineage of cancer running through a family.
Mm-hmm.
And they find that the adopted children get this cancer, the family cancer, with the same propensity as any of the natural siblings. And yet the child came from totally different genetics.
Wow.
And the idea about it is we say, cancer runs in families and it's genetics. Well, guess what? Now we know only 10% of cancer has a genetic foundation. 90% of cancer is not heredity-based. It's lifestyle and experience-based, okay? Why is this relevant? And the answer is that for all the years that you talk about cancer running in family, we always talked about cancer genes. They've never found a cancer gene. There aren't any cancer genes that are specifically cancer genes that if you have this gene, you're going to get cancer. Every gene they call a cancer gene comes with a % of people that get cancer. And I say, well, why? What does that mean? And I said, well, if you have this gene, 57% of the people with this gene get cancer. And I go, okay, what about the 43% that have the gene and they didn't get the cancer? Mm-hmm. So, we don't talk about that. And I go, well, I damn well think it's time we talk about it. Why? Because when you tell me that I have a gene for something and it turns out, well, yeah, but only a certain % of the people have this effect, and I'm going to tell you a fact. Well, then that gene does not cause that thing, period.
Mm-hmm.
And when they start talking about addicting genes, they're even harder to find than cancer genes, which they haven't found at all. So basically, it's learned behavioral programs and recognizing that we were programmed the first 6 years of our lives while we weren't even conscious during that programmable period. That by as a predominant brain state, when you look at the EEGs, primarily people under 6 are in theta, which is lower than consciousness, and that's that hypnosis trance. So basically, it says that we've all been programmed, and our lives are controlled by the programs that occur in the first 6 years. Interestingly enough, this is not new, this knowledge, because the Jesuits for 1,000 years have said, give me a child until it's 6 or 7, and it will belong to the church for the rest of its life. Or they would say something like, give me the child, and I will show you the man. Mm-hmm. What they knew was, if you give me the first 6 years of your life of programming, I control the rest of your life. Maybe they didn't know it, technically, but they knew it functionally. That what happens is, whatever programs you get in your subconscious mind, they're going to run 95% of your life.
Wow.
So they knew that if I get your first 6 years of programming, which is subconscious mind download, then I don't care if your wishes and desires the rest of your life are to do something different. If you have these fundamental programs in your subconscious, they will operate 95% of the time without you even knowing you're doing it. And so they knew that already. And so it's like I tell people, you think that little tidbit of knowledge got lost in history that people have forgotten? Mm-hmm. In fact, no, we've all been disempowered. And it is time for this evolution that's coming in front of us right now is the re-empowerment by knowing how the conscious and subconscious mind work and how we can reprogram the limiting and disempowering beliefs that culture and society and history have put into the lineage that led to us being here.
I have
Bruce,
two more.
I was going to say something real quick, Rita, and then we'll pan over to you here real quick. But you brought up cancer, and this is one of those alarming things. It's right now part of our language. Before, I remember back in the 70s, it was that strange anomaly that, was almost like an eclipse. But now it's actually part of fashion, as ugly as that may sound. And yet we're still out there fighting for cures to cancer, but yet the cure was already found back in the early 1900s.
Absolutely.
We're still buying into this nonsense, you know.
Because
that's
the
what
belief
blows my mind about all that is why. I mean,
because of the money,
benefiting
Daniel. The money. There's a lot of money here. Look how much money healthcare is costing this country. In the sense of what? Medicare costs are part of the bankrupting of the United States of America.
Exactly.
And I would say, well, why? And I would say, here's another reality. Organic diseases that are caused by our genetics being wrong, which can occur, okay, it only affect a small percent of the population, less than 5% of the population. The rest of the diseases that we manifest on this planet are lifestyle diseases, meaning cardiovascular disease. Over 90% is lifestyle. You don't have to take the drugs. You just have to change your lifestyle. Dean Ornish showed that when he took a group of cardiovascular patients and didn't go through the conventional pharmaceutical route, but changed their diet, gave them meditation techniques, and gave them, taught them skills for communication skills and stuff like that. And this group that didn't receive the pharmaceutical drugs, not only did their cardiac degeneration stopped, they actually regenerated the cardiovascular system, something that didn't happen in the patients that were taking the drugs. And so basically said this, it's lifestyle. And cancer, the American Cancer Society has now come out and given us some number, 60, 70% of cancer, totally lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so the whole idea is now we're being burdened to death with a Medicare bill, and then you say, well, but the medical profession should be taking care of us. And then I go, well, that's the big problem, folks. The medical corporation is a corporation. Corporations make money. That is their primary intention. That's any corporation, the first intention of a corporation is to make money for the shareholders. And I go, well, now consider a corporation that's based on medical care. And I go, okay. I say, what if they healed you? And then all of a sudden you say, well, then you wouldn't need them anymore. It's like, is that a good corporate program? The answer is no. That doesn't work for the corporation. So guess what? They don't give us the drugs, which they actually have some very effective drugs, but they don't sell them because it's bad for the business plan. And they keep people on drugs and hook them in for life. So people, they go, oh, I'm on statins, which are totally useless and destructive, except for a minor number of people can have an effect by it. But the 90% or more of them have no effect by the statins, but they get a lifetime prescription. And then they got other lifetime prescriptions. Why? They're not curing anybody. They're making monkeys, on their backs. People are taking drugs, 3, 4, 5 different drugs a day. And I say, well, how long are you going to take these drugs? It's like, we just keep taking them. It's like, oh my God, you guys you're addicts. You're addicts to the pharmaceutical industry.
Bruce, I was going to say, I wanted to get back to what Rita was going to ask you here real quick, but totally,
I have one last question now. Ahead. One last question, because your favorite, Sheila Gale, who interviewed you, she's going to interview me about my addiction in about 7 minutes. The last question I have, Bruce, is that current paradigm, the addiction professionals, they make people look at their whole life, give them a ton of assignments so that they can find out what the problem is coming from and teach them some tools and expect them to just stop using drugs and drinking. So what are your thoughts on that?
Until you change the subconscious belief system, all of that is basically like you might as well just hook them up for the lifetime prescription of drugs, because there's no healing that will come from any of that. The healing starts with the mind, and that's the whole idea about it. With only a small percentage of people being sick from organic causes, then it says, well, what's the other cause then? If it's not organic issues that cause disease and less than 10% have these organic causes, then where are most diseases coming from? The answer is the mind. Until you deal with the programming of the subconscious mind, all the rest of the stuff is just busy work and very expensive and costly, like Medicare and all that stuff. And basically it says, look, we've known about something called the placebo effect for 100 years probably now. And the fact is, why is that important? Because we don't study it. And I say, well, what does that mean? I say, well, what if we study it and found out how that we can encourage everybody to heal themselves with their own placebo effect? And I say, oh, that would be against the corporate interests of the pharmaceutical industry. And I go, yeah. And I say, well, that's why you don't see it, period. And the whole idea is it's not the placebo effect we have an issue with, it's the nocebo effect. It's the negative thinking and the negative programming and the limiting and disempowering beliefs such as incurable, or these
once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic.
Daniel, that's the end of the game right there. Until you change that belief system, you're going to play that out, because the nature of the mind is to take your beliefs and create reality from your beliefs. So if you have a positive belief, the nature of the mind is to give you that placebo effect and give you the positive healing. And if you have a negative belief, the nature of the mind is to manifest that, and that's called the nocebo effect. And when you look at the world, the biggest issues we have is nocebo problems. We have the biggest problem of programs that limit us and prevent us from even healing ourselves.
So I would like to thank you, Bruce, for giving this beautiful piece of information. I'm going to play this recording to as many counselors and mental health therapists in the world possible, and I had requested Dan to do this interview, and thank you very much for your precious time and allowing me to be part of your interview. And thank you for supporting me, endorsing me. It means a lot to me, and I have no words. So,
thank you, Rita. And Daniel, I really want to thank you for this opportunity to talk to your audience, because it's a time for us to prepare for the evolution that's coming, and the first preparation of that evolution is to reprogram us ourselves, to put our power back in our system, so we get out of the victim modality, which is really the limitations that prevent us from expressing our own inherent powers.
But then would you like to give information about Bruce and myself to the listeners so they can find out more?
Yes, Bruce, go ahead and give out a website, and we'll let
Very
Rita
simple
do the
one,
same.
Daniel. It's brucelipton.com.
That's about as easy as it gets. So how about
that works for me.
And mine is beliefmantra.com.
And mine is beyond50radio.com. That's 3 websites where you can get everything you need to make the personal transformation that's within all of us. After all, we all have a genie in the bottle. I'd like to thank Bruce Lipton and Rita Soman for joining me here on the Beyond 50 radio program. What a pleasure, and you're definitely always welcome to come back.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you for your audience. I so appreciate your audience, because people are interested in becoming self-empowered, and knowledge of self is the first step for self-empowerment.
I totally agree. We also want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. Again, visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. Sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. We'll also be posting this segment here on our blog, where we'll also have hot links where you can go through and find out and get everything you need. I'm Daniel Davis. Again, thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. Remember, live your day past halfway.